Okay, so got about 7 minutes at the top of the hour. VLCN is our leading gapper. It's got no news. And, I think it's safe to say we kind of missed the move. It was a 4 a.m. move and then continuation between 5 and 6 a.m., up to that peak there at 6:30. So it probably needs another long period of consolidation like that before maybe there's another opportunity. But it's higher priced. So I imagine, with bigger spreads, lighter volume, it's going to be risky. XXII, second leading gapper, had a move after hours into pre-market and then kind of rolled over. This one could work if it gets back above VWAP for, a squeeze back to 13, but it's a little ways away from those levels. So side chart on that one, side chart on VCLN, ABVE, $2.82. So cheaper. 16 million share float, a little higher, and recently had a big pop and then sold off. So I'm not sure as much about this one. Feels like it's kind of on the backside on that daily chart. WINT, a little too cheap. XXII, I've got a starter of this here as it's curling back up over 11. Watching the break of VWAP. So adding at 11:15, now looking for 11:25 and 11:30. So this could work here. So watching XXII over 11:15 added right there, 11:05. So now looking for this squeeze through this high. So we've got a nice pop. What I'd like to see is if we can get continuation on this. So the current high of that candle is 11:15. So watching this dip and then the pop back up over 11:15. Holding 8,000 shares. It needs to break the VWAP. So right now we're sort of below it. So sizing down, $800 loss. I'll give this another try if it comes back up. Being a little early still. But you've got higher volume on the red candle. So it's holding underneath VWAP. Buyback headlines sometimes work, sometimes don't. The thing with a buyback headline is that a company can say they're going to approve a buyback and then they never actually do it. So they authorize it, but they don't follow through with it. So XXII still on watch. It does have higher volume on this red candle, but I'd say there's a pretty clear pivot right here at 1119. So keeping that on watch. ABVE pulled back a little too much. So XXII and then watching news. GPUS is a little cheaper. So added back on XXII there. Just 5,000 shares as a starter. Taking a little profit. We'll see if it pulls away. So flipped me from red on the stock to green, but we'll see if, like I said, we'll see if it pulls away. $30,000 share seller on the ask there at 20. So 26,000 shares on the ask. Does that order get bought up? So added right there. Now looking for the squeeze back through the $0.50. Nice. A little profit up there. As that seller was getting bought up, I let it thin out. And then once it broke, I added. So just kind of breaking the ice. Went red on my first trade, but green on those second two trades. $200 moving average on NLSP. I see that at 350. I don't see news on VSLK right now. Okay, so watching BSLK as it's gaining a bit more momentum. 88, 90. High was 4. Would prefer it had news on it. Now you've got close to a double top up there. I was sort of watching 4. I was wondering if it would squeeze right through 4, but sort of pulled back. Now it's got a double top, so I'm not really sure right now. Yeah, something no more than 50% below the previous candle. So I look at it kind of relative to this move up, um, and that is kind of the halfway point. But it's a pretty big move from 250 to 4, so it could still work there. But I am just a little skeptical about jumping in it right now because it doesn't have news. It did pop up like 2 weeks ago or whatever, and then sold off again. So it's not a stock that's been completely, kind of silent for a long time, and then this is its big kind of moment. It's already had a couple days that popped up. So we'll see how this candle closes, if it's going to be a topping tail or if it's going to hold this level. Okay, so I got a starter here. This is now breaking and pulling away. So adding at 415, 420, and looking for the squeeze up to 450. So there's 423. I mean, we like seeing pops like that. can't complain too much. So let's see what it does here. Holding just 4,000 shares and back to flat the rest. So a small little scalp there. High day volume, green candle. High is 434. We'll see if it can hold over 4. So I was actually looking at how this candle was closing right here on the 1 minute, and I was looking at the volume on it, and the volume was, you could see that we were having increasing volume. So I was like, okay, that's good. And then right there, all of a sudden, some green started coming in, and I was like, okay, I think that's going to break 4. So I jumped in 398 for the break of 4, 398 average, and got a little scalp up to 425. I added a little high on it. I thought it was going to keep going, but then it stalled out. So I actually added at 426 and 428 even. And my best exit was only maybe 415. Not sure if I'll get back in up here. Seems like there's some sellers on it, and we already know it has no news, so maybe don't want to go back to the well too many times on this one. So looking at the volume profile here, we've got lighter volume on this attempt. So that makes me wonder if maybe the momentum is kind of declining a little bit. The strength is declining. The volume behind the move is going down. So we'll see. So recent IPO on V-Wave here, squeezing up. There's 525. Kind of watching to see where I can get a position on this. So starter at 465 here, and now watching over 550 to add. So there's 531 added there, 540. So holding right now, watching to see if we can get back up over this level, but seems a little heavy. So $500 loss on that for me. Best to just take it. Went with small size because it's lighter on volume. I think if you were quick, you could have made money on that if you just got out at 550 or 545. We'll see if it curls back up later. I was up pretty early again today, but I think hopefully I'll get adjusted before too long. So yes, I did put, I actually, I did have my order a couple cents above it, but as that seller started to thin out and it went from 22 to 19, 15, and started to get eaten up, I added before it broke. So once I saw that the seller was getting smaller, I decided to add some of those shares. The thing is, if you see a little bit of buying, but the seller is not getting smaller, well, it either means that it's a hidden seller or the amount of buying is just not big enough to eat away at that order. So, in that case, I don't really want to buy until I feel like it's starting to actually thin out. Some orders get canceled and then placed again. Other orders, depending on which ECN they're on, are only visible at certain times in the queue. So they're always there, but you don't always see them, which can be tricky. That depends on your data subscriptions. Yeah, well, my hotkeys have offsets always, and when I do order entry window, I always have offsets. So I'm always using an offset. I pretty much never would be like, oh, I want to get in at 169 and I'm going to send the order at 169. Good morning. I don't know that I would want, I don't think that I would want to feed my trading data into like AI. I don't know. I'd be a little protective of my trading data, but but I don't mind using TraderView. No, I don't short for a couple different reasons, but one of them is that because I'm trading in a retirement account, you're not allowed to short. So that's one of the limitations. Well, the minimum internet speed, what I usually ask is what kind of internet they have, what type of service provider, and I try to make sure I'm going to a place that has fiber. Because sometimes someone will say they have high speed internet, but they're using like satellite internet or something like that, or even cell phone, 5G, and it's going to have more latency. Starlink is pretty good, but that's not usually what most people have when they say they've got satellite. So, at least not in my experience. So I just call ahead and make sure they have fiber. And if they do, then good to go. Yeah, so I mean that's a very fast internet speed. If you go to speedtest.net, you can run a speed test to like New York City, any server in New York City, and it'll give you your approximate latency. And I during the trip was never higher than 150. Uh, but if I was in the 200s, that'd be higher. If I was above 300, that would be quite high. I'd prefer to use Ethernet when I can, but if they don't have the port available, then I'll use Wi-Fi. All right, we've got about a minute to the bottom of the hour. It was I didn't want to be more than 200 milliseconds of latency. So my latency right now to Secaucus, which is where a lot of the data centers are, is 13. now that I'm back home. But it was pretty consistently 110, 120 when I was in Spain and France. And, I mean, I traded just fine. The only times I had issues trading really was if the Wi Fi signal was poor, because a couple of hotels didn't have Ethernet cables. Not really sure about DGXX just yet. The float's a little higher, 29 million shares. Speedtest.net. Yep, that's the website that I've been using. It'd be sort of unusual for a 29 million share float stock to become our leading gainer. So I'm kind of just have lower expectations for DGXX. The font size, that's a good question. So maybe zooming out, control minus on um, your entire browser window. It's interesting on SBET. Well, so as of May 15th, there were 600,000 shares, but did they do an offering? Can't remember. I'm just saying tight right now. I got my scanner set up, so if something starts moving, I'll get an audio alert. And in the meantime, I just keep myself busy getting some other work done. I used NordVPN when we were in Spain and Italy and France. My team set up a custom server though, so I have a custom server that I run. But I really didn't use it every day. I would use it when I would get logged in and then I would turn it back off because it adds this latency. So I was kind of selective about when I was using it, and it sort of depends on where I am. You don't need a private server. You could use one of the ones they make available. The only problem is sometimes people use them for, like, I don't know, spam or something like that. So some of their publicly available servers end up getting like blacklisted from websites. So if you're using it, you try to go to websites, you can't, which is annoying. And it adds a little more latency because your connection's going through their server before it goes out to the internet. So if you've got really low, I mean, so look, if security is a concern, depending on where you are, then you should definitely use it. If it's not as much of a concern, then you don't want to add the latency. So that's kind of, I mean, if you've got two-factor, authentication stuff like that, then you're probably in good shape. But you got to decide for yourself what feels best. Yeah, that might happen periodically, and I'll have my team follow up with that. But even if someone's got it on for a little while, it's not the same as having access to it yourself. So we've got about 12 minutes at the top of the hour. WINT for me is a little too cheap. Seems like it's near ascending resistance as well. Well, sometimes when stocks are cheaper, they don't give enough range. So the only way to make money is to buy like a really big position, but that carries risk. And if the stock doesn't have a lot of volume, it can be hard to get in and out with that kind of size. So it just ends up not feeling like it's really worth it. No, I'm in my regular office. I just have the camera just mounted slightly differently. Feeling better. Thank you. So seeing some headlines, but not seeing quite as much movement as I'd like. I didn't even look at the level 2 on GEM. Hong Kong company, though. Yeah, ridiculous spread. BSLK. Let's see if this pops through 4. There's 408. So our new high a day would be up around 420. So this setup here essentially is a break of VWAP. You had the high right there, and that was sort of a pivot. Pulled back, broke that pivot. Now it's up to 4. This is an area where it had a little bit of trouble before, but could work. So we'll keep watching it. Previously, there were some sellers up around 420. There you go, 429. So now the question here is, what does this do at the highs? Is it going to be a double top, which would not be, surprising. So I'm going to take a little more profit here at 33, 34. And then we'll see whether or not it gives another opportunity. Yeah, I saw that on YHC. It must have been a stale order or something. Make sure you cancel all your orders before sending out that sell order again, because you probably still had a buy order out there. You can see a rejection there on that. I use the standard parameters for MACD, yes. Sorry. So on BSLK, it was right here at 79. Got that little dip, and it was holding over VWAP, and I thought that that was a pretty much the pivot. Well, the pivot was 88, but I thought that if we broke that, that we would go higher. So I got in just a little below that pivot. ENFY has news, but right now, higher volume on the red candle. The pivot being the previous high, so it's sort of an inverted head and shoulders pattern here where it had gone sort of down and then back up. It's a little bit more clear here. So resistance at that level and then dipped back down, came back up, dip, and then it's almost like a small cup and handle right double topped at that level. Yeah, very light volume on ENFY as well, so sort of a little algo spike. I pay per trade for commissions and per share for the ECN fees. So the ECN fees are passed on from the route where I send my orders through, and the commission is the money that Lightspeed gets for every trade I take. So, for instance, Lightspeed, I think, well, we can go to their website and see what their starting rate is. Um, if you're an active trader, they'll negotiate with you. But so let's see. So they have three free months. That's 3 free months. Okay. But the rate after that, let's see. Pricing. Per trade. So over 3,000 trades a month, you would be $2 per trade. So $2 per trade. So if you buy 10,000 shares, you pay $2 to Lightspeed, $2. But you also have to pay for which route you send your order through. So if you use NASDAQ here, you do 10,000 shares, let's just say, then the pricing on order routing for NASDAQ is 0.003 when you're removing liquidity right here. So that means it would actually be $30 on 10,000 shares. So your total cost to buy would be $32 on 10,000 shares. Now that's about a third of a penny, right? So over at Centerpoint, that same trade would be $40 because they charge you, they don't do per trade, they do per share commission of 0.001. So instead of being $2, it would be 10. So Centerpoint's a little more expensive because they don't do per trade, they only do per share, but they're similar. And with smaller share size, it wouldn't make a difference. So not sure what I think about BSLK. That false breakout there, then it dips down, then another inverted kind of head and shoulders here. But the last time it had this nice push, it just sort of petered out. So another nice push and then was just going to kind of, that's it. You had some ascending resistance here. So our high day is 64. This was too deep of a pullback to be a cup and handle from this pattern. That dropped too much. So it kind of became its own stair stepping down and then kind of right back up. It's a little tricky. So high a day, 64. So break a 64. Does that, kind of turn into a bigger move? Right now, not yet. It's a little topping tail, if anything. And then going red back down. Trend lines are relevant on any time frame that it seems well established. So you could see it has been tested multiple times and feels valid. I agree. This one does not seem that it wants to pull away. So current time about 8:28. Yeah, VLCN. This one I've had on my side chart, wondering if we're going to get a move. High this candle is 27.56. So that's kind of the level that we want to see break. So high there, 26.70. VLCN. Look at that. Wow. Okay. Holy smokes. Look at that. Look at that pop. So added here and looking for the squeeze through 30. So now looking for high a day. That's a wild move. So watching down here, dip 27.50, holding 2,000 shares. So we'll watch here and see what it does. So I'm, a little thrown off, but I'm going to keep it on watch. So our pre-market high is about 32. Yeah, I don't know why that popped right there at 8:30. It's like right at 8:30. There wasn't a headline, was there? I didn't see one. What was the remind me, what was the one we traded yesterday, pre-market? Was it NUWE? Hmm.